We pull up to this venue. Richard and Stephanie flew out. The van doors open, and I remember them describing it as like billows of smoke plumed out of the van. It was like a Cheech and Chong film or something. But we would tour and have like bongs and stuff like that. And I think we look back and we're like, probably shouldn't have been that stoned.
Welcome, everyone, to This Was The Scene, the podcast that takes a look back at the late 90s, early 2000 punk scene. I am your host, Mike Doyle. Before we begin, I don't know if you know, but I have an animation company called Drive Studios. I do explainer videos. I started doing whiteboard animations. So if you are a marketing director or CMO listening to this and you're looking for either of those services, I also do logo animations, then hit me up at mike@drive80.com. Steel Train was an indie rock band from New Jersey. They met in the mid-90s at the solemn Schechter Day School in Bergen County, New Jersey. Before the band existed, Jack Antonoff and Daniel Silbert were part of the hardcore band Outline, and Evan Winiker and Matt Goldman were in the punk band Random Task. Fun fact, Ben from Armor for Sleep, that was his first band where he was playing drums. I also interviewed Ben, so you should go check out that interview. After the dissolution of these bands, Steel Train formed in 2002. The band soon signed to Drive Thru Records, toured for many years, and then they disbanded in 2013. And you probably heard about what Jack's been up to these days. My old band Landmire used to play with these guys a lot back in New Jersey when we were starting out, and they were just these little kids, these two bands, but it was just wild to see these guys that were in their like mid-teens just fucking rocking out at Legion halls. And the cool thing about this conversation is you really hear how that has stuck with Evan through these years. And I haven't talked to this dude in like 2 decades or more, and it was really awesome to just sit down and bullshit with him. So it was definitely a fun conversation because it's just like between like two old friends just like catching up and then talking about this time period. So I got Evan on the Skype, and that's what we chat about. Joining Range Media, growing up in the Jersey scene, the Juliana Theory story, starting Steel Train, being the black sheep of Drive Thru Records, the Finch Show, playing Coachella with fun, Braceface Zine, the video that was filmed at the Teaneck Legion Hall, is there a reunion on the horizon, and a ton more. Lastly, if you want to support the podcast, you can go check out my Patreon. It's $1 a month. It's over at patreon.com/thiswasthescene. It's just if you want to help out with the bills of keeping this thing alive. And if you want to do that, that would be great. That's all I got to say, so feel free to subscribe, leave a review, and share this with anyone who would love some punk rock nostalgia. With that said, let's get started.
This made my day, dude, when I got that note. Seriously.
I've been trying to get in touch with, I think like one time you said yeah, and then like when I think of the people I want to interview or remember, I'm usually like out at a bar and like I'm like 2 or 3 drinks in, and I'm like, all right, let me start messaging people.
So great. That's a good way to do it.
What are you up to? I was doing a little research. You have a music management company or movies? Like what is the?
Yeah, we started a company about 3.5 years ago. It's a film and TV, music, sports, and brand management company. We look after people like Jack Harlow and Corday, Bazzi, Lau, people like that on the music side. On the film and TV side, it's a lot of A-list actors and great directors. On the sports side, it's people like Brock Purdy, Dwayne Wade, Paul Pierce, just some amazing storytellers and athletes.
What? My friend, she'll lose her fucking mind. She's a 49ers diehard fan.
Oh,
So
we
she,
were there last week. It was heartbreaking.
oh man, you were at the
Yeah.
game.
Yeah, and it was like one of those things where it just felt like they were going to win.
Yeah, it did.
And you watched it, obviously, right?
Yeah.
Uh, did you want the Niners to win as well?
I didn't really care. I wanted them to win just for her because she's been such a diehard fan forever, and she's actually married to. I don't know if you ever met Tom Simon.
Sounds familiar.
He used to work for Universal way back in the day, and he grew up in Jersey, so he used to go to shows. We met. He interviewed Lanemeyer, like,
Wow.
yeah, like back in the day, and we just stayed friends. That's how I found like came down to North Carolina. He was living down here, and then so we hang out all the time, and we'll like talk about Jersey shit and stuff. But like that's how I met his wife, and then she's a 49ers fan, and here we are.
So
So
cool.
yeah,
Tell me, where do you live?
I'm in Raleigh. Did you guys ever play here?
You know what? I don't know if we ever played there, but I definitely know where it is.
You probably played either Cat's Cradle.
Oh, of course. You're so right. Raleigh, Durham. Yeah. It's a cool area, man. That's so nice.
Yeah, it's dope. Where you're in? Are you in LA? Or are you like Northern
Yeah,
Cali?
I'm in LA. I'm between Malibu and the hills, so I have a great life, very lucky. But I love North Carolina. It's a great place.
Yeah, it's cool here, man. Yeah, I was like, I mean, kind of, it's like you kind of check in on people here and there, and then when I thought of having you on, because I had Ben on to talk about random tasks, which was so funny. 'Cause there was like only so much we could really talk about, because it's like,
Oh.
hey, we were banned for like 2 years or so, and then it's like, yep, that's it. But but I was thinking about, I was like, I want to get your side because I just remember you playing bass in that band. And just like watching you guys just grow up, and then then you do Steel Train, and then you're doing all this stuff now. I'm just like, it blows my mind, like watching where you guys went.
Well, you know where it all came from. I mean, to be totally honest, you guys were such a huge influence, and you specifically, because I have such core memories of going to the Teaneck Legion Hall or other places and literally seeing you play bass, and you wore these gloves that had the fingers cut off
I don't remember that.
with the skeleton finger things on them. It
Oh, I
was
think I do remember
it was kind of amazing. For like a, 15 or 14 or 16, however old I was, it was really like, wow, this is something. It's so cool.
I definitely want to talk about when we get to it the fuck, what band? Juliana Theory story.
Oh, it's an amazing story. Dude, I interviewed you guys because I used to do that zine Braceface.
Yeah, and you like shit on our. You gave us like a shitty interview, or you gave us like a not a shitty review, but you had like a slight hand, or what is it? Like you slighted us a little bit when you were.
That's terrible because that makes me feel so bad because Stories from the Big Screen was such a big album for us. I still remember the songs from it. No one can say that. Ah, it's so good. You guys are so catchy. I probably was like I had some like snarky tone probably because I probably wanted to be something I wasn't with that zine, but I'm sorry if I offended you
Oh no,
guys.
we confronted you actually. Like we saw you at a show, and I was like, "Bro, what the fuck?" And it was like all in in jest. It was loving, but yeah, I still have that zine somewhere. That literal copy of that issue.
Labor of love putting that together. I could get into all that also. But yeah, dude, I did some research. I love the show. It's fantastic. I was listening to the Go Kart Records episode and brought back a lot of memories.
Yeah, that one's fucking crazy. That was so awesome. Greg's such a nice guy. He was like, "Yeah, dude, I have stories for days." And I was like, "I wish I could fucking record them all. We should put them in a book." All right, just so for the sake of time, I don't really know how much time you have.
I have like an hour and a half, so as long as you want to go.
I mean, I can go for 3 hours, so
Wow, wow.
which I've done
Well,
before.
let's keep it flowing and we'll figure it out.
Yeah, man. I mean, I want to sit. I would love to just sit here and catch up and bullshit, but I want to record and I mean, it's
Yeah.
obviously recording, but yeah, man. So just for everyone listening, I kind of want to talk about start with how you got in the scene in good old New Jersey.
I was so lucky to be at the right place at the right time. I think 13 years old. I'm in eighth grade. Ben Jorgensen, who was my bandmate at the time, invites me to go to a show with him. And I didn't even know what a show was. He had older siblings that had like known about this burgeoning scene. And we ended up going with his sister to this show on a Friday night. And it was one of the coolest experiences. I'll never forget walking in this small room. It was so packed that it felt like there was sweat coming down from the ceiling. And it was a ska show because at the time that was kind of what was happening. So it was like Right Turn Eddie, Taxi Cab Samurais, and a few other bands. But like what blew my mind was there was this whole world that existed that I had no idea about.
Which Legion Hall was it? Do you remember?
Teaneck VFW.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, where I would go on to see you guys play a bunch and huge influence for me. So I always thank you for that. Really, that's huge. But yeah, that show changed my life. And then I think from there, we went into freshman year of high school, and we were lucky enough to kind of see a path because guys like Gabe Saporta and Josh Dicker and Ricky were just leaving our high school. They had just graduated, but they were kind of these like heroes to us because they were these guys that followed their dreams, and to us, they were kind of accomplishing them. So during the weekends in high school, we would go to these shows and we would go see Humble Beginnings play. And for me, Humble Beginnings and Lanemeyer were kind of seminal bands. You guys were putting out albums, I think around the same time. They had just put out an album on Eyeball, and I think you guys might have been putting out Stories from the Big Screen then, or maybe it was a demo, but we would listen to those on, tapes in our cars over and over and over again. And that's what really got us to want to be in a band like Random Task.
Yeah, so how did this start? Did you just learn how to play bass because you got put in the band, or did you already have you been playing for a little bit before that?
Ben had played drums, Jeremiah played guitar, and they needed a bass player. This is in seventh grade. And, I was taking lessons at a place called OD Bella in Bergen, New Jersey. And we were like just playing at our friends' like bar mitzvahs and just doing stuff like in a garage. But I think in ninth grade, we saw there was kind of a path to really being a real band. Started this band called Random Task. Matt Goldman was in our high school, and we came together and we would probably practice once a week. I don't even know how we ended up getting our first show. It might have been through Ben's sister, but I remember there was a band called Angel Sin. They were more of like a goth band, but they were playing some show at like a JCC somewhere. And I remember that being our first show. And then from there, you kind of piece together shows with your friends inviting you, and then suddenly your friends are putting on the shows. But going out every Friday and Saturday was such a huge part of our lives. And just that was a time where, guys like you who were in these bands that were kind of headlining these shows, it felt so far away, which was a beautiful thing, really. Like it felt like to get to where you guys were, it would take years and years.
I just remember seeing you guys show up and play. There was just this mix of kind of like seasoned bands who had toured a little bit, and then we were starting off with Humble, and then you guys. So we had played a little bit, and then see you guys come in. So there's like this mix of like mid 20s age. Then there's like the kind of late teens, and then you guys were what, 16, 15?
Yeah, 16, 17, 15. We would see you guys play everywhere. West Orange Legion Hall in 98. Obviously, Wayne Firehouse was so incredible. M&M Hall, all those places, dude. And like the best part was like going to the show, but also like, buying pins, buying patches, buying stickers. That was the coolest shit ever.
Do you have any? Like, did you keep any of that stuff from back
I
then?
do. I mean, my room in my parents' house in New Jersey is like a shrine to that scene. It's a museum, and my parents have tried to, get me to like take down that wall, but I refuse to. It's just all flyers from that time.
Holy shit, you gotta take a photo of that next time you're home and fucking send it to
I
me to
have it. I'll send
post.
it to you. I
Yeah,
definitely have one here.
so fucking dope, dude. Yeah, there's have you been on the NJPP archives website?
I am going to go to it. I have not, but I'm going to do it right now.
Yeah, there's a whole section on it with flyers, so you can.
Wow.
And let me see.
Oh, I'm
He,
looking at it right now.
yeah, it looks like the link. It's like I don't know. That doesn't go to the flyers anymore. What the fuck?
We'll get there. We'll find it.
I don't know if you fucking took the show. Oh, there it is. Albums. There you go. If you go to albums, it's got it all years. So I think, what year did you start going?
Probably 97.
Okay, so if you click on
Oh, I
97,
got it.
yeah, and there's
Yeah,
all these
this is
flyers there.
incredible.
You're probably on there. You're also on the on his SoundCloud, the random task
Oh,
like
wow.
demos. All your recordings are on there.
I love that. This is so special, dude. What a great time period. We were so lucky to be a part of it.
I mean, that whole group, even just the Facebook group, started all this stuff off because people were sort of like through the years, they're like, oh, like Joe, he was like, let me archive all this for and take 50,000 years to upload all this shit, and then the flyers, and this led to this podcast, and this led to what was the thing that was going on in the group? Do you follow the NJPP group on Facebook at all?
I have to. I want to.
Yeah, just fucking go to it right now. But I mean, there's so much stuff in there. But they're like people like re-recorded music and stuff.
By the way, looking over all this stuff right now, it just really brings me back. Such great nights. And also like looking at these pictures of you guys in humble beginnings, like jump, like because there's a lot of like mid-air shots. I will never forget like it gives me so much perspective now because when you're in, eighth, ninth, 10th grade, whatever it is, and you go home every night, you kind of feel like you're in a box. And then when you're at a show like that, it feels like the world is right in front of you. Watching you guys do stuff like that and do jumps in the middle of your set, that kind of thing, it's like I remember going to my room and holding a bass and literally like practicing that.
That's so
I swear to God. And that you take that stuff with you your whole life. We're always watching what other people do and learning from it. And like that's such a fundamental early time for me for that. It's so cool.
Yeah, I remember in the beginning, I think you were a little timid, and then I noticed you would start. I mean, majority of people get their stage presence by watching other people, whatever instrument they're playing. They're like, all right, I want to kind of mimic that person. And I remember there was one show I was at. It was like some kid's birthday party or bar mitzvah or
It's
bar
amazing.
mitzvah, and there was just a ton of kids there. And you guys get up and you're like going ape shit, and you're like looking over me and just like smiling, like look at this. And I was like, oh my
Oh my
God.
God. That's absurd. I'm probably so embarrassed by that. But I think I would say like as like high school went on and we started playing tons and tons and tons of shows, we were watching tons of bands. So I remember every now and then there's a band that comes through town and you're like, holy shit. Snapcase came through in like 10th grade or something, and you see the guy flip the guitar over his head. Suddenly, like when we're at home, we're always trying to do that. You have to get a new strap. There were so many different things like that. And I think the beauty is that by a senior in high school, we had been to so many shows, we had seen so many great bands that we had probably put together a show that was pretty good. And I think it's the same thing for the artists that I work with now, because I love being a sounding board and kind of helping motivate and coach and inspire people to get to where they want to get to across all forms of entertainment and media. But specifically, like on that side with the live show, I love giving notes because I love being able to kind of have a foot planted in both worlds.
Well, you lived it for so long. I mean, you went from these scrappy little Legion halls, then you guys do Steel Train, and you're playing like these big ass stages and shit, like in these tours.
And like it started exactly at this point where we're talking about like this is everything, and Jack and I talk about this all the time. Those were such golden days for us because it was like our starting point. There's so many specific nights that I look back to, and it absolutely brought us to where we are now. So I feel blessed. I would say, big picture wise, like the easy way to put it is Random Task, our first band in like seventh grade through like 12th grade, whatever it was, that we learned so many different things. It was the first time that we toured kind of in sophomore and junior and senior year. And then that kind of took us to Steel Train, which was a real touring band. We toured for like 10 years, very, very long time, and learned so much about the world, about music, about business, because those two things are very different in my mind, music and the music business. They're very different. And, Jack had this other amazing band after that called Fun. I was lucky to kind of fill in with them for a little bit, which was fun. But honestly, that was no pun, but I didn't even mean to do that pun. It just happened. But when I was about 29, I had kind of gotten to the point where I didn't really want to be on tour forever. And I didn't want to be a 50-year-old guy in a backstage room. And we had visited every backstage room you could think of many, many times. And I was like, I just don't really want to do this anymore. One of my close friends who we grew up with was one of Bruno Mars' managers. And this is like pre Uptown Funk, pre Grenade. This was like Bruno before he was Bruno. He was writing songs for other people. I think he had maybe Nothing on You or Billionaire. He had like one song that people knew. And my friends were building this company around him. And I was lucky enough, again, to just be in the right place at the right time. But I had a lot of ambition and I had a lot of relationships and I had a lot of know how. And they brought me in and I started managing acts. And, I signed one to this label and I signed one to another label. And really started growing these acts and using the relationships that I built from my years on tour to kind of help those bands grow. And I loved it. And I had so much fun doing it. And I kept growing my roster. Bruno became huge for those guys. They did a couple Super Bowls for him. I was super lucky to be on the sidelines and watching them as they grew him and learning and also continuing to grow my clients. And, every now and then you get a client that's bigger and then another one that's bigger. And then maybe in like 2017, Brandon, who I was working with at the time, started a new company with a guy named Irving Azoff and Jeffrey Azoff, who are kind of like legendary figures in the music scene. Irving's managed the Eagles for years and a ton of acts like that. That company started, I think, 2017 around that time. And I just, again, was at the right place at the right time. Jared Leto was kind of parting ways with his old manager and kind of took a liking to me. And we started working together. And we did that for a long time. And that was a great experience for me because it kind of thrust me into a different world that was a little bit bigger. We were traveling the world, doing great things. We put out an album. It was number one. We had a lot of number one songs. We broke records at alternative radio. I continued to like deepen my contact base and just have fun and live life. I got to be a part of the Travis Scott rollout for Astroworld because his manager wanted more hands on deck. So I was lucky enough to be a part of that, which I think was a really cool little thing. And then about 3.5 years ago, myself and a number of other managers who are at different companies, we kind of always had this idea about starting something that was ours. My friend Matt, who's at Scooter's company, my friend Tyler, who had Party Next Door and Wonder Girl, my friend Jack, who I'd worked with previously. We did Atlas Genius together, and Nicky Romero. And we had this idea of starting something. And on a parallel path, there were these film and TV people that were starting something. They were leaving CAA and WME and taking with them some really big acting clients, Bradley Cooper, Tom Hardy, Michael Fassbender, people like that. So this kind of came together, and it's called Range Media. I'm very lucky to have been there from very early on, and I'm really proud of it. I have a great group of artists that I work with. We have a great music team. The company is growing in such a beautiful way. And I still lean back on kind of like the fundamentals that I learned during this time period. But I love it. I'm still close with a lot of my old bandmates, and I love getting to reminisce with people like you. Really, really happy to be here.
Did you? I mean, you covered so much. I'm going to take it back to T-Neck or Wayne and Firehall in a second. But do you like the fact, because when you're in Steel Train, that puts you in a spotlight in a certain way, where we didn't have all of the phones and shit that we have now really to capture you and just document your life and put your face everywhere, right? So you go from that life, and then you're like behind the scenes managing people, so you get to live that touring, that music, the business lifestyle and travel and all that stuff, but you don't have to have your face out in the front and have it be kind of exposed where like the spotlight's on you. Like but you still get to live that life. Like, do you appreciate that you don't have to put up with the
It's a great point. I think if we were captured everywhere from the beginning, you would see all the flaws. So I think there is a beauty to people discovering us when we were ready to be discovered. And I see that parallel a lot nowadays. If an artist blows up, has a viral song, the whole spotlight, the whole world is looking at them. They might not be ready for it. So I feel blessed that technology was not where it's at. One thing I do look back on though, like every 10 years, maybe even 8 years, there is a new technology that just changes the game and gives us more efficiencies, but also there are the negative things like you just discussed. But yeah, I feel blessed that we were not captured the whole time. We were certainly not ready.
Well, I mean, like Jack, he went off. I mean, when Fun came out, that put his face on. Who's the singer of Fun again?
Nate Roos.
Yeah, that's it. Like, I mean, obviously when you're front man, your face is all over the place, but it was him and Jack and the drummer or something, like three guys
Andrew.
started. Yeah, the three guys started that band.
Andrew, yeah.
So then Jack's face starts getting all over the place, and it's not like, I mean, it's almost like, those people that are famous where you're like, I kind of know them, but it's not like if you see Bradley Cooper out, you're like, holy shit, that's Bradley Cooper. When you see Jack, you're like, why do I fucking know that guy? But it's like he can kind of get away still with going out and just being at fucking Whole Foods, probably not having people like be like, oh my god. Does he? I don't know. Like when you guys get together and talk about that shit, are you kind of like, yeah, man, I'm glad I don't have to deal with that crap?
That's a good question. We don't really you know what? I don't think we've really had a conversation of him being like, oh, it's so hard to go out, because he's like honestly a man of the people. You know what I mean? So it's like people aren't coming up to him and asking him for autographs, but I'm sure people are like, I know that guy. He looks like Rick Moranis or something. Yeah.
He looks like Lewis from Ghostbusters. That's the guy that produced Taylor Swift. Holy shit. Or wrote songs with her.
Jack is a brother to me, and like has blessed me with so much. I wouldn't be in Steel Train without him. We were obviously in brother bands. Random Task and Outline were we all grew up together. We all went to like young Jewish school together, like in 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th grade, and that's where we all started like having this love for the scene and music and shows. And we were, there was like a healthy rivalry between the two bands, Random Task and Outline, but we were best friends. I would say 90% of the shows that we were on, if you look at the flyers in my room, they were on. So we'd always be going to shows together. We'd always be going to diners after. And then as high school was ending and college was starting for most of our friends, Steel Train had just gotten signed to Drive Thru Records. It was Jack and our friend Scott. And he was like, I want this to be a band. I want a bass player. And I was like, let's go. And we literally just went to the races.
Leading up to that, yeah, like the rival, no, not the rival, just like you guys, because I remember you guys playing together all the time. And before that, I have to ask, I got to bring up the Wayne Firehouse thing, and then I want to bring up the thing.
Yeah, well, Jack was a part of that. You're talking about the Juliana theory, right?
Yeah, like you guys, I've told this story a bunch of times. I talked to
I
Alex
love
from
it.
Eyeball, and he told the story, and he
Yes.
also was like, yeah, I confronted him afterwards, and I talked to Ben, and Ben's like friends with Brett and stuff now. So like, I just remember it as like I came in, you came up to me, and you're like, yo, that Juliana theory guy just like unplugged us one by one, and I was like, what the fuck? Like, what was that? I mean, this isn't like I have to get this perspective from you because I've had to tell this so many times, and I want to hear what happened.
I'll
And
try to give you the like best version of this that I can remember. But so this show was on a Friday night at the Wayne Firehouse, and our guitar player Jeremiah wasn't able to play, so Jack was actually playing with us that night. And what ends up happening is we're playing on that like makeshift stage, and it's the Juliana Theory show, I guess, because they're kind of the touring band. They're definitely headlining. We were definitely like one of the openers, I think. And we were playing our set, we're jumping around, and I don't know if the show was running late, which I'd imagine it was, something like that. But Brett from the Juliana Theory walks back to the back of Jack's cab and pulls out the cord, and the music stops. On a similar timeline, Alex from Eyeball and Jeff Rickley were trying to sign Random Task to Eyeball Records. We had this hilarious like dinner where they came to Ben's parents' house, and like they're sitting there and our parents are like grilling them with questions, and they're like, we just want to sign your band, your kids, it's not going to change their lives in a bad way or anything. Alex was very much like, I don't want to say a guardian, but he was like, he looked out for us, and I think he probably looked out for a lot of bands. After the show, we walk off stage, our set gets cut short, and Alex literally pushes Brett up against the trailer of a van with his right hand, like he's holding his neck to the van, and kind of saying something like, don't you ever do that, or it was something along the lines of that. It's a story we still talk about, and we hated Juliana Theory for years till later Steel Train would tour with Juliana Theory and Something Corporate, probably like 6 years later. I don't remember if we like made up with him or anything, but who knows.
did you ever? I mean, have you ever talked to him? Like, I mean, like when you were on tour, did you guys ever talk about that show?
I think we definitely did, but I don't know if we were like chuckling about it and like laughing or having a beer or something. But we were kids, and it probably meant so much to us. And for him, he's probably like, "What the fuck? This is just another night."
Yeah, I just remember you just looked so crushed, and I was so pissed. And we got on stage, and I like made some comment. I was like, "Yeah, don't worry, won't go around and like unplug. Hopefully, no one comes up here and fucking unplugs us or some shit." Or like, yeah, it was like, like super tough guy and stuff. But I remember that, and then I interviewed Alex, and he was talking about. He's like, "Yeah," he was talking about the dinner with your parents and all that stuff, and we talked about that show. He's like, "Yeah, I probably didn't handle it the best." Like
Yeah, he
afterwards.
definitely did not. He's a good dude, though. I haven't seen him in a long time. I hope he's doing well.
Yeah, he's great to talk to. He's living, I think he's in Atlanta now or something like that. Yeah, they're still doing the label, like. But all right, so how does the transition go from Random Task into Steel Train? Because I think, and just real quick, didn't Jack get like kicked out of Outline or something?
I don't. No, no, he wasn't kicked out of Outline because Outline was like his band. But I could tell you with Random Task, I think as like high school was ending, Ben, I think, was writing a lot of the songs for Random Task, and I think wasn't really singing them. And we had had such great experiences recording. I remember this with John Niclario. Like that was our first experience in a real studio, because the first studio we ever did anything in was a teacher from our school. So we would go up to Newburgh, record there. And I just remember, Matt was singing these songs. They were great songs. And Ben was writing a lot of them. And it was very obvious that he was a great songwriter. I really, he was writing really great songs back then. And I think he probably wanted to be singing them. So he started his own band, Armor for Sleep. And Random Test kind of went on a little bit and started like a little, a second band. But I don't think it was a real focus, at least for me at the time.
And you were how old at this point?
I think 17, 18. We had done like 2 tours. We were still in high school. And Jack was kind of ending Outline and had started playing music with this guy at this school he went to in New York called PCS. And they were kind of like playing acoustic guitar. And it was just the two of them. But I think he realized, he wanted it to be a touring band, and he wanted a bass player, and he hit me up. We were very close. All of our friends were starting to go to college, and it was just like this. It was so obvious what to do. And I remember my parents were like, well, if you're not going to go to college, like, how do we know you're going to be okay? And I made them some absurd promise, like something like, if I didn't make $1 million in the first year, I'll go back. Like, that's how absurd it is. But the beauty of that is like, it bought us enough runway to like accomplish great things where they saw, okay, this is going somewhere. And I really applaud them for allowing us to do that, because I think there's many parents that wouldn't.
Well, this is like 2003. So did you guys immediately get signed to Drive Thru?
Yes, so they were already signed probably in like July, and I joined in August, and then we flew to LA immediately and made a record at Hans Zimmer's recording studio, which was such a cool experience. And he was like really nice to us. Oddly, I remember he gave me like a I wonder if it was like a Devo record or something on vinyl, but I remember going into his like cool, he has this cave of like synthesizers, and they were shooting like, Rango and Pirates of the Caribbean, and there'd always be cool people coming into the studio, and I was like, LA is so cool. It was our first taste of like, okay, this is like us living on our own. And the irony is that my office is actually right near where that studio was, and I don't think of that a lot. But I love finding perspective and reminding myself of fun things, because it's so easy for all of us in our lives to just get bogged down by the mire of like day to day kind of stuff. But we're so lucky, dude. We have so much. We have great health. We have great lives. We get to do what we love to do. When I think back to those days, it's like I can see how we're kind of scaling up the mountain that we wanted to climb. But that was such a great time period. And we honestly, right after that, we went in the studio with John Niclero. We brought him out in LA. And then we just started touring. We just went right into it. So Drive Thru at the time, and I think a lot of the bands in the punk scene at the time, there was kind of this model of like, if you tour with this bigger band, you'll pick up some of their audience. And then if you tour with this bigger band, you'll pick up some of this audience. And then you kind of put together this like tapestry of your own audience built off these other bands. What I think we were also seeing at the time was the beginnings of like social media, where you've got MySpace coming in, and you've got places where audiences and communities can come together. And I think we kind of latched onto that, but it was still a time in the music industry where you needed gatekeepers to kind of like stamp you and legitimize you. So we were kind of doing a little bit of both of those things, building a fan base, and also of kind of figuring out who the next level of people were that could help us break into the next world that we wanted. And, to Jack's credit, and I think to mine as well, I think we always wanted more. We were always really ambitious. Nothing seemed too far out of sight. Just like when we would see you guys play in high school and you guys were headlining those shows, we were like, okay, there's like a path to get there. I think when we were on tour and we were opening for Finch or something corporate or whoever it was, they were headlining these rooms of 3,000 people. And we were like, okay, there's a path to get there. And after those tours, we would go out and headline, 300, 400 person clubs across the country. And we'd like, do pretty well. We did that for a long time. But I think a few years into that, we kind of realized a couple things. We were on a carousel, and we can keep doing this thing where we're doing 6 tours a year, which is crazy. It's so insane to look back on that. But like, we really have to figure out what we are, because we were always kind of the black sheep to a degree of Drive Thru.
I was going to say that. I could agree with that.
What's your perspective on our spot in the Drive Thru landscape?
I felt like you guys didn't fit just because your sound was folky and Drive Thru was pop punk and faster. And so when you guys got on there, it made sense because Drive Thru was picking up every Jersey band because Jersey was blowing up, and it's like, especially if you did something prior to that, it's like, all right, like we know you guys have done this, you've put in some time, or you've toured or whatever it is, and then like when you guys got on there, I heard it and I was like, this does not sound like Drive Thru at all. Like, did you feel that it kind of worked against you?
Great question. It was, I think, more of a negative than a positive if you were to kind of like look at the glass half full or half empty. But there was a beauty to it. And Richard and Stephanie, I think they probably get picked at a lot for different things. But I would say they signed Jack because I think there was a band called Gibbler, and the Gibbler guys gave them a tape that Jack had made with a song called Story and a Dream on it. Really cool song. And they were like, this guy is going to be our first diamond artist. They were right. They were totally right. You know what I mean? But it's hard to keep someone like that in a contract forever. Also, those contracts back then were so they're and I don't super fault Richard and Stephanie for this, because there were a lot of deals that were like this at the time, but they're kind of like prison sentences where you're signing these bad long-term deals for very small percentage, very small advance, very long-term 6-album deals. And you're like 18 years old. You have no idea what you're doing. You're just hoping it's a great opportunity.
Well, plus Drive Thru was, I mean, they were like the label that was the spotlight because all the bands coming from there, Midtown,
Yes.
fucking something corporate, starting line, like you guys, it's like all these bands, and everyone was like, ooh, wow. Like, even I have a friend now that she lives down here, and I mentioned that I grew up playing with Midtown. She was like, oh my fucking God, are you serious? Like, I was the biggest Midtown fan, and I was like, yeah, man, because the label had so much reach.
Yes. That first Midtown record was amazing.
It's
We
so
loved
good.
that. God, I wish I could hate you for the rest of my.
Did you see them at all when they played last year?
Yeah, of course, but oh no, 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 I didn't. I just mean way back in the day. But by the way, also every now and then a band comes in, and I was talking about earlier, like does something that influences you. It could be a jump, it could be a flip of a guitar. They all dress the same. That was so cool. And like Gabe is a smart dude. He totally got the marketing side, and kudos to him really for doing that kind of stuff early.
I mean, he's still doing it. Do you bump into him too? Because he does a lot of management.
I do, yeah. Yeah, I see him probably once every few months, and we always have a nice exchange. You know, we both came from the same place, which is, I like that a lot.
So when you start touring and drive through all these bands that are more like punk driven, at any point did you start to be like, okay, let's start getting on some shows with bands that we kind of mesh with a little bit more?
Well, I think what ended up happening was we did a tour with Finch. All these bands would take us out because they loved us.
I feel like that's such a like it's polar opposite band to see
Oh yeah,
live.
bro, this is the best story ever. So like, there's a great phrase where, and I heard this through the years, you're a band's band. You're a band that bands love, but like fans maybe don't get it. And you know, we ended up building a great, beautiful fan base. I love our fans so much from back then. But you know, I think all these bands loved us, and they were like, we just want to have openers that we love, which I respect so greatly. But like their fans didn't really get it. So, you know, we'd be playing for 3,000 Finch fans, and maybe like 300 of them were like into it. We played a show in New Jersey. I think it was at Birch Hill or Starland or somewhere, probably Birch Hill. Their fans were booing us and like giving us the finger. And our parents were standing on the side of the stage because it was our hometown show. It was Jersey. We're opening for them. Finch all wore steel train shirts that night. And we're like, if you don't like them, we don't like. It was like they really drew a line in the sand. And that was so sweet of them. But we had a lot of those experiences. And then I think ultimately, you know, we were like, who are we? And we had always been drawn to like musically driven stuff. We loved the Grateful Dead and stuff like that. So we made a record in 2004 in San Francisco with a lot of members of the Dead world, the Grateful Dead world. Then we started really like getting into that space. So we changed management. We went with this company called Superfly, who started Bonnaroo and Vegas and a couple other festivals. And they kind of put us in that world, which was a really cool experience because it was our first foray into the festival world. That was amazing because once you go to a festival, you're at this crossroads where there's tons of different types of bands. So your relationships can grow exponentially. So that took us out of the punk scene. Now, keep in mind, we were still on Drive Thru. So we were still putting out records through this funnel. Our world was growing. We had picked up a new publicist who was great. He was getting us in Rolling Stone, getting us in places that really took us out of that scene. But we still were a part of that scene. You know, we were growing and picking up new fans and again, still touring and touring and touring. And we had like our brother bands who were kind of like Limbeck and the Format, who were kind of like outliers in the scene as well. I think one thing that ended up happening was in 2007 or 8, we made this record and it was just a great record and it came out through Drive Thru and we felt like we were just judged by the label that we were on. And I'll never forget, there's this Elvis Costello quote that Jack and I would always talk about, which is if you judge a band by the label that they're on, it's like buying a box of cornflakes and eating the cardboard box. And we felt like we couldn't escape this. So ultimately what we ended up doing, I think it was probably 2009, maybe 2010, Jack's dad helped us buy out of our Drive Thru deal. We were probably on our like 4th record with them or something, and we had another 2 or something. And he gave us a bunch of money and let us buy out. And we paid it back through the years, but we had to be free. I think it allowed Jack to make an amazing album and feel like we weren't going to be judged on the label that we were on. So we put the record out ourselves. We had new management at the time. You know, at that point, we were probably doing like 800 to 1,000 cap rooms across America, Bowery Ballroom in New York.
That were there to see you guys, or they were there to see the tour you were on?
they were there to see us. We had a fan base. This is also pre-Instagram. Twitter was probably just becoming a thing, but the bands that we were touring with were now not like Finch and Starting Line. They were now Tegan and Sarah, Ben Folds, people like that. So we were really growing. However, one thing that I look back on, and I think this is really important to note from a marketing side and an A&R side, if I go and try a Coca-Cola for the first time and I've never had it, I'm going to make a decision on whether I like it or not. Now, for 8 years prior to this, people had listened to Steel Train and probably made a decision on whether they liked it or not. Now, the music that we were making in 2010 was very different than the music that we were making in 2003. But because we had the same name, some people probably didn't want to try it and didn't want to give us a chance because they'd already made up their mind. If we had changed our name at that time and put out that album with a different name, I think I'd probably be in a different place because I'd probably still be touring in bands. Because I think if we had achieved a different level of success at that point in my career, probably would have stayed with it. I'm so thankful, and it's one of these beautiful things about life where it's like it brings you to where you are supposed to be. And like a lot of the time the things that we want, we might not get in that moment, but when you look back, you're like, wow, I'm so thankful. Really.
Real quick, if you're looking for an explainer video or someone to do motion graphics for your company, check out my company, drive80.com, and you can email me at mike@drive80.com for more info. That's all I got to say. So now back to the interview. Well, it sets you up for the thing that's coming, right? And you don't want it sometimes or expect it, but once you get that thing that you didn't even saw that was coming, you're like, you're in it, and then a couple years into it, most likely you look back and go, oh shit, if I didn't do that other thing, this never would have happened, and I wouldn't be able to sustain it as well as I am.
Exactly, dude. So, by the way, recounting all these stories, I don't do this often, so it makes me a little nostalgic.
Yeah.
But I'm also trying to piece together exactly kind of how it happened. So as Steel Train puts out this album, and as we're,
Is this the self-titled one with Bullet on it?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, which I think it's my favorite Steel Train album. I think it was the best songs he had written up till that point, and we had been now touring for 7 or 8 years on that side, and we had the 5 years of being in bands before that. So we were kind of like seasoned vets, I would say, on the live side. Like we knew what we were doing. We felt confident on stage. I think the part that was really probably killing us was like touring in a van, and every now and then you tour in a bus, and it was just a lot. But Fun on a Parallel Path was starting to develop a really big audience. And we're talking, Nate had this band, The Format, which kind of broke up. Fun starts doing, 2,000 people, 3,000 people. I remember Steel Train played Coachella one year, and then Fun played it the next. I sat in with them at that show, which was so awesome. But Fun really had a kind of a series of things go together perfectly. They wrote this great song, which everyone knew was going to be a big hit. I think it might have even was maybe going to go to a massive artist, but they ended up keeping it for themselves. And they put this song out, and it gets a huge sync on Glee. It gets a huge sync during the Super Bowl. And there might have been one other thing that happened, but We Are Young ultimately ends up becoming this massive, massive watershed moment. And the dam just breaks. And they have a huge hit after that with Some Nights and then Carry On. And it's like, suddenly this becomes the thing. Steel Train at this point, we were kind of done. And, Jack also wanted to start Bleachers and was starting Bleachers. And Daniel and I from Steel Train were going to do Bleachers with him. And I remember at one point, Jack being like, I think I'm going to have to do this on my own. And to me, that was like, whoa, that's a lot to handle. But again, it was like one of those things where it was like, I was already starting to manage. I was already in this world. And it was like, I can throw myself into this full time and dedicate my full self to this, or still keep one foot in that scene. But I'm thankful that happened because it allowed me to get great at what I'm doing right now and also really focus on it. And, Fun became this huge band, ultimately breaking up. And Bleachers has become just a institution. It's beautiful what Jack's built with that band. And so much of what we grew up with and what we learned, he still carries through. And I think community is kind of at the core of all of it. It's very, very amazing.
I mean, I think to your point, when you're saying if we changed the name of the band, it may have been received like you would have had less of a barrier potentially with the name, and then getting rid of Drive Thru as the label, which totally, I mean, that makes sense. I mean, I think I don't even I do it so much now, but back then, if I saw a band on a label, it's like when Bracket was on Fat, people were like, "What the fuck," and they kind of you're like, "This doesn't make any sense." I think Jack proved your point when he goes and does Fun and Bleachers and all that stuff because the name has changed and his songs and his writings. Because I mean, you could hear in Bullet where it was just that step in that direction where he went with that, and it's like you see it. So I think he proved that point 100%.
Oh, it's so cool to kind of look back, which I really rarely do. I don't listen to those songs that much, but if I hear those, you can totally see the DNA of Bleachers. And also it's always in his writing. It's really cool when you know someone for that long to kind of be able to look back and be like, "Oh, that's where it started." But it really started with Outline and it really started with
Yeah.
Fizz, and it's such a cool thing looking back. I love it.
When you were hold on a second, when you were doing Coachella with those guys, were you on the main stage?
So Steel Train played the main stage of Coachella in 2010, and then I think Fun played it in 2012. And their bass player was out for a couple months, so I filled in with them. They did a tour with Panic at the Disco, which was a lot of fun to be a part of. I don't even think We Are Young was out, but we were playing it, and it was just like that song is such an amazing anthem that you really feel it when you're playing it.
But like when you're looking out in the sea, because I've been to Coachella before, which I would definitely not go again, just me personally. It was way too much, man. The Molly was fun, but the like look, it was kind of weird getting up in the morning at my house and people were like passing a plate of cocaine on their eggs, and I was like, I'm good. I don't
Oh
really need that
no.
shit. But when you're on stage looking out, because I just know how massive that crowd is. I mean, those two main stages looking out, or even if you're in the hangar or whatever, there's just a sea of people when you're up there with like when Fun's kind of getting like a little bit more play than Steel Train was, or that's like, and the people in the crowd, or more people potentially know that. Are you just looking out, just being like, holy shit, man?
Yeah, we were so lucky. We had started having those experiences from 2006 on, probably 2005 on, because we knew we wanted to be a part of the festival world. So I'll never forget the first time we played Bonnaroo, one of these milestone moments in your life. And Jack and I still talk about this. Like that is a moment where we were so nervous before, and I remember we were in the trailer, and I remember walking out to the side of the stage. It was Thursday night of Bonnaroo, which was like a really cool night because there's not a ton of other artists playing, and it's like everyone's there. There might have been, it felt like 15,000 people. Maybe there was like 11,000, 10,000. But I remember Mike Gordon from Fish was there watching, and there were some cool people. And it was like, oh, fuck, this is happening. And we absolutely crushed it. And that was our first taste of it. And once you taste it, you're just like, oh, just we need to be back here more and more. One other moment that happened right after that, maybe like a couple weeks later, we were on tour with some band that we were not supposed to be on tour with, a band called John Brown's Body, like a reggae band. But we were in Arkansas and we're playing basketball, and we got a call from our publicist who tells us we're going to be on Conan, which was another like life changing moment. Thank you, Jim Pitt. I just saw you the other day. You are the best. But yeah, those festivals, like getting those experiences, it just it makes you feel like you're at the top of the world. And we had a bunch of those through the years. I think, yeah, I would say Coachella with Fun was the last one that I played, and then I stopped, touring. Well, I guess we did a reunion in 2016 at Jack's Festival, Shadow of the City. But it just feels so good to play for that many people.
Do you think it would have benefited you guys a little bit more? Because nowadays it's just festivals on top of festivals on top of festivals, and they're all very themed. They're very acceptably mixed, I guess is the way I'd say it. If this was happening back then, do you think that would have worked in your favor just to be like, let's get on as many of those as possible?
I do think so. And like, I think if we were starting a band now, I would say the core of it is putting together your community and your audience and building that, and like not trying to be who you're not, and trying to bring in the people that should be there, and then trying to make them be like, yo guys, there's layers to this onion. Check this out. And guess what? We also do this, and we're funny and we're smart and we have cool things that we love. Like bring your audience in. I think we had started in that world, we could have gone awry. It's pretty easy to go down a path and follow that path. That's also why I applaud Jack, because he does a really good job of following his North Star. And he could so easily be taken this way or that way, but he does the right things for what he wants to do with his band and also his brand.
What was Steel Trend like on tour? Were you guys mischievous or just
Oh,
chill, or
oh my
what were you
God,
guys like?
best times ever. We never did like crazy drugs or anything, but we would smoke a lot of pot. And
I
I'll
could,
never
I
forget
could
the
see that.
first. Oh, crazy! The first tour we ever did was with Finch. It was a huge tour. It was like 3,000 people. The first show was at the Huntridge Theater in Las Vegas. We legit drove from like New Jersey in a 15-passenger van that Drive Thru Records had bought us all the way to the Huntridge Theater. But like, I don't think we gave ourselves enough time, or we were just like space cadets. But we were like at the Hoover Dam, and like load in is like 3 hours ago, and like sound check, we've missed it already. We're like literally like gonna miss the show. We pull up to this venue. Richard and Stephanie flew out. The van doors open, and I remember them describing it as like billows of smoke plumed out of the van. It was like a Cheech and Chong film or something. But we would tour and have like bongs and stuff like that. And I think we look back and we're like, probably shouldn't have been that stoned. That was like the first couple of years, but it never got crazy with us. We never did anything terrible. I think again during those like Bonnaroo years, it was like, oh, we're here in this new world. Like, let's do some like mushrooms, and we'd have like experiences where we went to places like our parents' like houses and stuff, and did mushrooms and played music for our friends. But it never got to some weird like acid test type place. But we would have the best times on tour, and we would stay out. And I remember the first time we went to Europe. I just remember us like walking through the streets on some of those nights and having great times. Really fun.
Did you hear the story about Saves the Day? They did a shit ton of like they were doing psychedelics while they were making Stay What You Are.
I would love to hear about that.
Because I interviewed Brian and he was like, yeah, so I don't know if you know about this, but we got really big into psychedelics. He's like everyone but Eben, and that really went hand in hand with the writing of that record. And I was like, oh my God, that makes so much sense. I mean, he goes that one song, it's like the second to last song where he's like floating down a river. Shit. Do you remember this record at all?
I do. Yeah, yeah, of course.
He's like that entire song. Fuck, man, this is gonna drive me crazy. I gotta Spotify this.
I would say that like in like high school, you start to hear like Dark Side of the Moon and then Kid A, and you're like smoking pot every now and then, and like hearing these records, and you're like, whoa! But we didn't know how to make that kind of music till later. And then I think the kind of music that we were experimenting with was really in like San Francisco in 2004 or five when we were just like jamming. And I remember these jams in the barn where we would just it was really psychedelic with like Grateful Dead's producer and people from that world, David Grisman. And we just smoked a lot of weed, but thankfully it never got to anything like serious. We never did any hard drugs or anything like that.
Well, I was gonna say, actually, the song is "This Is Not an Exit." It's like tonight will be the night that
Yeah,
we.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Basically, my question leading into what you just said though was when you start kind of experimenting more with just like a little bit more, did you find that the songs afterwards kind of progressed a little bit more, or you're like, nah, we kind of kept the same sound, didn't really do much for us?
I would say in our case it went the opposite direction because I think I don't want to say the worst Steel Train record, but certainly the one that is like an alphabet or like, a rainbow of colors in so many different directions is the Twilight Tales record we did with the Grateful Dead guy, who was an awesome dude and made a really fun album for us. But like, I think that it's not that concise. It doesn't feel like one thing. It's kind of all over the place. So it's hard to really get a handle on what it is. And I think a lot of that is because we were smoking weed and doing all that stuff.
I almost feel like that time in the band was kind of a bit of a science experiment, to where you guys all went to. It's just like this little tiny thing, this little bubble you lived in for a while and tried shit out, and then when you broke out of it, you're like, oh, okay, like that was to the point before of this is why we're here where we are now because of that little time cap, that little thing we were in doing all
A
that shit.
100%. 100%.
Who had the idea for Bullet? Because you guys filmed that in the Teaneck?
Yep. Teaneck Legion Hall. Totally Jack. 100%.
Yeah, you know who told me that? Fucking Barker from Landmeyer.
Heck, yeah, of course. How's he doing?
He's good. He's working. He was working for Verizon. He was like really high up for a while, and now he's making videos or like marketing things, or he's working with like Kelsey Grammer for his
Oh, wow.
tequila or vodka or some shit. Like doing
Wow.
yeah, and there's this golf course in Vernon. He does a lot of stuff for them. But yeah, he's doing great. He's got two little girls and he's married and he's like a great dad.
That's so great.
I might see him in a couple months. We might be a bunch of us from high school might be doing like a dudes weekend thing.
That's so cool.
Yeah, but he hit me up a couple years ago. He's like, "Yo, check this out." It's like this is Steel Train did this shit at Teaneck. I'm like, "What the fuck?" And the video, like it fucking, I feel like it totally
Dude,
encapsulates that feeling from back then.
yes, I'm so happy to hear you say that. That means a lot because we honestly tried to emulate that. And I think that whole album, we kind of wanted to have that feel, that like DIY punk feel. We really didn't talk about Braceface a lot, the zine that I did, but like that was such a big thing for me. And I'm only tying it back to this time period because Teaneck Legion Hall for me was as much about the music as it was about the community. And it's like what went on outside the show and in the halls of the show was just as important as the actual music and the bands.
Oh, 1,000%, dude.
That was our first. I'm trying to think of the right way to put this, but it was like there was a world that was a part of the music, and it was Rick to life, bringing his distro to shows and selling VHS tapes. That was how you found out about places like the Fireside Bowl in Chicago. You'd watch videos of these performances of Los Crudos or whoever it was playing there, and you'd be like, oh my God, there's a punk scene in Chicago. Oh my God, there's a punk scene in Texas. Oh my God, there's a punk scene in Florida. This is kind of, I don't want to say pre-YouTube, but it kind of was because the videos on YouTube were not like full performances of bands that you could watch and learn from. It was like Charlie Bit My Finger, 3-minute video, whatever it is.
Yeah.
So like it was so important to have these people there because it was your library. It was exposing you to new inspiration points. The zine that I had was very much inspired by Joe from Scratch Kid had a zine. Do you remember what it was called?
I don't, but I know exactly what you're talking about.
My heart is broken that I don't remember it because it was such an inspiration for me. But I also remember Annoyance Zine, and these were people that would cut clippings together and get interviews from bands that we were friends with, and then sometimes bands that were bigger. And again, I was just so ambitious. I just wanted to do more and be and touch more points in the punk community and in the scene and JPP. And I really would just reach out to people. And I remember reaching out to like Fat Records and I interviewed like Lagwagon and No Effects and whoever else. And I'd have my friends like Ben and Jeremiah and Matt and Jack and Daniel and all of us write like reviews of like pizza places in like Teaneck, New Jersey and shit. And I would literally go across the street to the synagogue that was across from my house and they would let me use their copy machine. And I would paste it together at my house, which would take a long time. Then I would copy it, which would take forever. Then I would staple it and cut it together. And then we would like sell them, but mostly give them away. It's like looking back on that, so much work went into that, and it makes me so proud.
I mean, I actually talked to Anthony in an interview, like in the very beginning of this thing, and we were talking about that whole process. He's like, yeah, or the majority of people would echo this, and they'd say, you go to Kinko's and pay the 40 cents or something, and just, you go up to the counter and be like, oh, I only got like 3 copies or something, and you'd have like 1,000 prints, and then they'd go and staple it all together and hand this shit out. A lot of this stuff, when you're remembering, it's probably not 100%, but it's kind of close. I think I remember reading the Braceface issue with us where I think you interviewed us, didn't you?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
did. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. With there was like high school kids on the cover or something. Oh my God, Jack might even be on that cover. It might be a picture of his class in like seventh grade.
I know that I have that in
Wow.
in my closet. Like I have that. I have an annoying scene where we got interviewed. I think I even have an annoying girl
Oh, I
scene.
remember that. Oh my God, that was her name Rachel?
Kelly.
Kelly. Okay, got it.
Yeah, she dated Josh for like a hot second, and he wrote, I think, Activate about her. I forget. Or
Wow, I remember those songs.
Faith 98's
Faith
about
98,
her.
great song
It's
also.
such a great goddamn song. I love that song so much. But yeah, I've been trying to find her to get her on this thing to talk to her about like that whole thing. Because I mean, she would interview a lot of bands. I mean, she interviewed Trey Cool one time.
Is that the song that goes, you went from happy to sad
Yep.
from, oh my God, that's so crazy.
Ugly to new from living like the time that I see you now. Oh my God, like the
Wow.
breakdown in that chorus is like it gives me chills every like I remember when I first heard it. Josh, they just finished recording it, and I remember I think he gave me the CD or he had it on tape, and I listened to it, and I was like, what is this fucking song? And we were like late showing up to Rockaway VFW, and I can hear them from the outside, and I ran in just like yell that song back to them because I was like, this is like the best song ever.
Wow.
Yeah, it was so much fun.
Dude, that album that had 334 on it changed my life. No joke. Changed my life. And all of us, like
Yeah.
that, they were definitely the band that we were like, and I think really because they went to our school or a couple of them did, it was like, this is it. Felt so good. But you guys too, you were a big part of it, really.
I mean, it's cool to hear that too when I would like look up and see, or look up, when I look and see how, where a lot of people from the scene went who we used to play with shows with. And then like when we stopped and see that you guys and like Ben just were like, yeah, we're going to keep it going. They just keep it going. I just saw Armor here a couple months ago.
Was it great?
That was great. Yeah. And then me and PJ met up afterwards, like, yo, you guys drinking? We're like, yeah. He like shows up. We're just like getting drunk at this bar. It's like a block away.
That's so funny. PJ Nash, obviously Ben, like we all came up together. They were in Prevent Falls. We had such great times, and then after that, and I would say, I'm just thinking back to that time. Such great memories, really, like such great memories.
Kind of like going back to the label thing. I know this kind of, I don't really know the segue as well back to that, but I wanted to just get this point. What label do you think would have suited you best back then instead of Drive Thru?
It's a good question, and I think at that point it was important to pick up an audience from your label. There was a label called Anti that we always loved because they had a lot of cool artists. They had Tom Waits, they had Nick Cave. It was like a collection of bands that were doing different things. I think maybe Red Light or whatever it was, ATO, whatever that label is. It was like a hodgepodge of cool different types of artists. You had My Morning Jacket. You also had like David Gray. So maybe we would have fit more in that. But I also think whatever label we were on, I think Jack might have even crafted some of the songs towards that a little bit. We certainly didn't with Drive Thru, but I mean, look, I look back at what we got from Drive Thru and I see the positives. I know a lot of people see the negatives in their own experience from them, but I see the positives. I was going to say I ran into Mikey Way maybe a month ago and I hadn't seen him in years. I just remember they were in Sector 12 and Pensy Prep, and we were talking about our experiences of like diners and where we used to go after playing in Maplewood or Summit. It was such a nice hang.
What was your favorite diner to go to back then?
That's a great question. There was one in Wayne that we loved. We always loved the Coach House, which was like on Route 4. That was kind of near us in Teaneck.
Okay. I don't think I know that one.
And we had a place called Louis Charcoal Pit that was gone. What was your guys' favorite?
Uh, the Wayne Diner was awesome. That was around 23. We'd go there a
Mm-hmm.
lot. The TikTok, I mean, that was a staple. It's still there, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Jefferson Diner. No, I kind of like the Rockaway Diner. I mean, there's the diners that you would go to just to go to, and it was the ones that you went to after the show. So the ones that we went to after the show were usually the one in the Wayne Diner, the Pompton Lakes one.
Yep. Dude, the best thing ever is that like we were so young, we had no food palate. So it's like our understanding of what good food was like on a scale of 1 to 10, a 1. So we'd go to diners and be like, that was great. If I went back there now, I'd probably be like, what the fuck are we eating? Oh man.
I mean, the only thing we really ate were like a plate of fries or disco fries.
Oh, bro. Oh my
Oh,
God, now I'm remembering it. Where we used to go a lot was Chili's on Route 17 because
yeah.
I don't know, it was Chris Conti or something. One of our friends like worked there.
Wait, no, was it Chili's or Applebee's? I thought Applebee's was the
Well,
one that everyone went to.
Applebee's was such a big part of the scene. And the Bergenfield girls, when we were 16 and we didn't have our licenses, all summer we would go with them and we would go to Route 17 Applebee's. And it was like Pete from, what was the band he was in before, Revolution Summer?
Yeah,
Was it Scratch Kid? I think he was the bass player in a band and he went to high school with Jack.
he
I
wasn't
know they had
in
some, no?
He wasn't in Heckle. I keep thinking that
No,
was Revolution
he was in
Summer. That's different.
Revolution Summer. He also was always like, there were some people back then that had such strong beliefs. They were really like militant, like had some like, and not like military, but like staunch beliefs. And it's funny because, I think we all identified by like what we stood for. And I was a vegetarian, but I was never like vegetarian of like meat is murder, that kind of thing. And there were some people that were. I'm not saying Pete was one of those guys. I actually don't remember exactly, but I just remember looking back and it's funny because we were all kind of like archetypes to some degree, but I'm sure we've all blossomed into great people, I hope.
I think the person that worked there you were trying to think about was Dom.
Yes, exactly. You are completely right. Oh man, what a good dude.
He started working there. I think it was after he went on tour roadieing for.
Not IDK. Not IDK, right?
No, not I do want to talk to those guys. Yeah, he roadied for Beefcake, and
Yep. Oh my God.
I'd asked him about this. He lost all this weight on tour because he was just like starving, or he would just started eating apples instead of all this shit. Yeah. So when I saw him he was working one time, he's like, hey man, I was like, who the fuck is this guy? It's like, it's Dom. I was like, what the fuck?
Do you run into people from the scene a lot?
I mean, we played a show in 2018, so that it was in Teaneck. It was at Mexicali. Or have you been there?
I have. We definitely had some shows there years ago. Wow.
Yeah, it was. We had a reunion show with Humble and Jettison,
Wow.
and the place was packed. It was like 300 capacity, and I mean everyone was there, dude. It was like a punk rock like class reunion. It was the coolest fucking thing.
Oh my God. I wish I had known.
Oh, dude, it was yeah, that was awesome. And then we played the Midtown show at Starland last December, not this past December, the year before. It was the biggest show we'd ever played. And they're like, he texts me or calls me. He's like, "Hey man, Blaemar want to open for us?" I was like, yeah." So we saw a bunch of them then.
Was Brian Fallon in Landmeyer
Yeah, he took over for
after Rob?
Chris. Yeah, when Barker left, we got Brian before he was Brian, and he was in for almost a year, and we took him on his first tour when we toured the Lawrence Arms. Actually, I think it was the Lawrence Arms. I know I told this story a bunch of times. That show where Brett unplugged you guys.
Yeah.
That was the beginning of our tour with the Lawrence Arms.
Wow.
Yeah, if I do remember correctly.
What happened to Rob?
Heiner?
Yeah.
He's still living in Jefferson. He's got 3 kids. He had a fucking stroke last year, and
What?
he's fine. Yeah, it was really scary. It actually
Oh,
the year anniversary of that was last week. He posted about it, and
wow. But he's
yeah,
okay?
yeah, he's great. He said he's like 110% better now. He's just living healthier.
Good.
But yeah, Barker texted me or he called me in the morning. He's like, "Hey, what's up?" I'm like, "Oh, this is a nice surprise." He's like, "Yeah, not the best news," and I was like, "Holy shit, man!" I was like, "This is." Like we're in our 40s, dude. That shit shouldn't be happening. But
Oh, man.
yeah, but he's good though. He's totally good.
Good.
Yeah, do you still like I mean, I connect with people because of this podcast. I mean, I've had so many conversations with people from back then. I mean, the first 30 episodes was just all New Jersey, so I just caught up with everyone like 5 years ago.
I mean, I think Jack, Daniel, Jeremiah, Matt, Ben, there was a core there. Eric Knapp, who was like the bass player
Yeah.
in Outline. I don't talk to him that much, but he's a great dude. Those were the guys that we would, and Matt, we'd be like at diners together back in the day. I'm really close with, Jeremiah, Matt, Ben, or Jack, Daniel. But I don't want to say I've lost touch with some people, but we're just older and very busy. Life moves, right?
Have you guys thought about doing a Steel Train reunion show?
I have a feeling we will. Yeah, I think we will at some point. There's definitely been like talk of it, but Bleachers is nonstop. Jack's biggest producer in the world, making
Yeah.
some amazing albums. He's absolutely the best producer in the world. He's like stuff he does is there's so much intent behind it, which is really rare. I think most people are just trying to write songs, and I think he's thinking on a bigger picture.
Yeah, every time I see his name pop up or he'll be in the background of a video where they're doing the behind the scenes, I'm like, "What the fuck?" What?
He made some of the best. I mean, the Lana album he made this year is the best album of the year. Whether or not it won that, it's the best album of the year by far.
So when I was doing some research, I saw that you were kind of you were in the internet a little bit there, a little spotlight kind of hit you for a dating thing. I don't want to like get too far in it, but I don't want to get into that. But when you are thrown into kind of the mix where you start seeing your name Googled, like who is this guy dating this person? Did that like kind of get in your face at all and become annoying?
I'm not a fan of it, especially because of my role now, where I work with artists and actors and directors, and I want them to have the spotlight. I certainly don't want to be in it, especially for like a personal thing.
Yeah.
I don't love the spotlight, but I love helping people accomplish their dreams.
Well, did it give you kind of a perspective of what your artists or the people you manage go through to say like, I kind of get it now, like a little bit?
It did. It actually really did. That's a really good point. And I think you're referencing something that happened last year. Just
Yeah. I mean, I just wanted to bring it up. Just I was more interested in the point of like because when I put your name in, all of a sudden it's just like the questions are who's this guy, and I'm like I wonder how that
yeah,
must have felt because it's like you didn't ask for that, and all of a sudden everyone's like kind of talking and formulating who you are, and you're like what the fuck?
it's a really great point. I spent a lot of this year really learning an important lesson, which is uh, I think the most important thing is being happy with yourself and not worrying about what people think of you or who people think you are, because those people are not on your journey. Like your family, your close friends, this is your life and your journey, and it doesn't matter whether other people are thinking of you or taking notice. It shouldn't matter. But for artists who make great music, like, there is a really important part about getting a spotlight shined on you when you are doing something special. But for people's personal lives, like, I think that's bullshit. I don't think, paparazzi or whatever that is, I think that's pretty low. So I'm not thinking about that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think it definitely to the point before though, like when people are coming to work with you, they might be like, yeah, you can kind of get it a little bit, like with I don't know, it might work in your favor with some newer
Yeah.
people.
Yeah, I haven't thought of that.
This is one question I wrote when we were talking, like, do you see like bands now that are in the same predicament that you were when like Steel Train, like let's say with a label or maybe on the wrong tours where like you kind of step in and give them advice and say like, hey, like I've been through this might work better for you?
All the time. I think, the beauty of the artists that we work with now is they are at a certain level. They're doing real venues, 3 to 10,000 cap rooms, and they've done all these before. And there's certainly always the conversation of, is this the right play? How much space is there between these drives? How much flying time is there? That kind of thing. And I love giving input, but I think a lot of the artists that we work with, they know what they want, and every now and then they'll ask for it.
So you kind of just like stay back and be like, all right, you guys just do your thing.
We definitely offer. I think when we're going over tours, we're kind of saying, here's why this makes sense. Here's what we think you'll feel, that kind of thing. And this drive isn't too bad. Or I mean, we have a situation right now where we have a client who might do Good Morning America on Friday, but has to be in South Korea for a show on like Sunday or Monday. And we're trying to figure out how to make that work. And I'm kind of like rationalizing, well, here's why it's important to do it, but I also understand if you don't want to do it because it gives you another 12 hours of flying time, and then maybe you're going to be bad for the show in Seoul. You'll be down. So we're always kind of leaving it up to them because it's their decision at the end of the day. But we are also kind of highlighting what's the bigger picture, what's the real thing. This is an artist right now who's got a song that's just blowing up, and our focus is getting to the next stage here, which is probably US radio. So if our goal is we need to hit 5 million US consumption next week, how do we get there? Is Good Morning America going to help us? Or is it better for him to go to South Korea and kind of focus on the next thing? And we'll do Good Morning America in April. So those are fun problems to talk about. I love that because it's like, this is like it feels like you're putting the building blocks in place, and there's like a map to where you want to get to, just like what we were talking about earlier.
That's wild, dude. Even the way you said that, I'm like, you're so seasoned and just saying, yeah, well, this and this is what we got to do. I'm like, wow, that's a whole world that I just do not know, which is
But
crazy.
I feel like you know it. You do.
I never understood the music thing. Even when we did the Midtown thing last year, I had to have Hit kind of tell me, like, they asked for something. I text him, I'm like, bro, what is this? He's like, are you serious? I'm like, I don't know this fucking world. I'm like, I don't look like an idiot when I respond. Like, help me out, man.
What was it? Do you remember?
It was like something about they needed like a snapshot or a PDF of our setup on stage or something, but I forget what they called it.
Tech writer? Or...
Yeah, something like that. And I was like, it was one of those where I just don't like to be bothered with certain shit that I just think is stupid. But I think then after I did, I was like, okay, this is actually kind of necessary. But they're like, they needed it months before we played. I was like, I don't fucking know how we're gonna do this. Like, this is ridiculous. But I mean, then I can understand. They're like, this is why it's necessary. And I'm like, all right, I just got a little education there on this. All right, man. So before I ask the last two questions, is there a story that you've always wanted to tell that you've never told before in an interview that you'd like to tell now? It doesn't have to be like incriminating or anything. It could be something funny. It could be just something that warms your heart. I don't know, just something from back then on touring or something you're like, oh, this is a cool. I just remember this.
Give me 10 seconds. I just want to think.
Yeah, yeah, go for it. I can always edit this down.
I have so many memories from like when we got our first merch shipment from Eric's mom. I remember that because she made the shirts and they were like comedically like Spinal Tap small. They were like legit, like it was like a corner of the shirt was in the thing. It was so great. And us getting our first demos and our first tapes and selling them. And I don't know if there's like one story that stands out, but it's honestly just like a jigsaw puzzle of all these beautiful memories put together.
Yeah, that's not an answer. No, I'm kidding.
I know, I don't have anything good. Damn.
Like any, I don't know, any like Steel Train tour where you run on and like some funny thing happened or like you guys were on
Some Steel Train tour.
stage. Actually, I guess I'll ask this, just because it's specific. You said the Conan thing. What was it like to play on Conan? Like, what was that whole process, and how did it feel when you're like behind the, when the cameras are in front of you, and you guys are like, all right, let's go time.
Totally one of the coolest experiences of my life. Still looking back, we ended up doing it so many other times, all those shows. But I would say the first time we did it, it was still at a point where TV had the power to break you in the best way and like expose you to the whole world. And I think we really treated it as such. And I think we did a great job. And we were definitely a little nervous, but I'll go back and rewatch it later because I'm actually now like excited to. I think we were probably really good.
I'm watching it right now. You guys are
Are
so
you?
energetic. I have it on mute, and like, you guys are like going
He
nuts.
was so great to us. We did that show a few times, and the booker of that is still a really close friend. He's a great guy. We had an artist play it this week. I went over there, or I saw him. He's the booker of Kimmel now. Yeah, dude. Looking back, like I remember us being in the dressing room before, and I remember us being in the dressing room after, and just like hugging and feeling like we're getting to where we want to get to. But also, it crosses off that box of this is a lifelong dream come true.
Yeah, dude. I mean, was the first one because there's a bunch of them, like you said, but it's 7/7/2008. Was that the first time you guys were playing I Feel Weird? Is that the first time you went on?
That's it. That's so funny.
Yeah, and then you got Bullet on Conan 1/11/2011.
We did.
You did Letterman.
Yep, that was really cool. I remember we did George Lopez's show, and Jack's amp broke at the end of the first song, so we had to do it again. And then his amp didn't start, so we had to do it again. And then it didn't work again. And he literally, George Lopez walked off the set. George Lopez is a member of my golf club. I still talk to him about that story now. I still say to him, "You walked off. You literally walked off the stage." And we were like nervous as hell. It was so great.
He's part of my golf club, and you're like, bro. He's like, my bad, dude.
Yeah, he
That's
doesn't care. He's
amazing.
like, probably. He's like, you should have gotten in on the first time.
I love that.
That experience is still so special for artists. Anytime you do something like that, because you're a part of something bigger. You're a part of like a variety show that's being broadcast throughout the world. It's going to live forever. So you want to make it great, but you also know it's this amazing opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, I remember seeing At the Drive and playing Conan. I thought it was the greatest thing
Oh
ever.
my God, changed my life. That performance changed when he jumps in back of the amp after. Changed my life.
Yeah, so incredible. I remember they like came on and I had like this little TV in my kitchen in my mom's condo and I was trying to find out where to put it and I was like I had to like run downstairs because my TV didn't have cable in my room or something and I'm watching it and just like this is the greatest thing ever.
Yeah, it really was. Honestly, at the drive-in for their live show and for the music being totally different and out there, Saves the Day's first couple albums, changed my life. Humble Beginnings and Lane Meyer changed my life. There were so many important bands. Lifetime changed my life that like helped us get to where we are. And like I'm so thankful that I was at the right place at the right time with the right people, Daniel, Jack, Jeremiah, Matt, like Ben, like all it. We shared this amazing thing together and you were a part of it and all those people were a part of it.
Dude, I fucking love your energy. I think like more people should be as positive as you. Like I love
Ah,
it.
thank you, sir.
I dig
Thank you
it.
very much.
I mean, you were always super like positive back then, so it's nice to see you've just continued on that path.
We have so much to be happy about, right? We're so lucky. Every day is beautiful. I live in the most beautiful place in the world. I get to travel. My family's healthy. I'm healthy. I feel very blessed.
All right, man. So I'll wrap this up. Two questions before I ask the last one. What would you like to plug? It could be about you. It could be about a friend. It could be about both.
Uh, what would I like to plug? I honestly have nothing to plug. I have nothing to plug. But here's what I
Guy
will
with
say.
all these artists, you're like, yeah, no one's really doing much these days. I'm good.
They're all doing amazing stuff. I'm just more, I don't like self-promoting, but I love music. I feel there's so much great music happening right now. So I feel so thankful also to be a part of this time. I get to work with great artists. I get to listen to great artists. I get to be with great artists. I'm very, very blessed.
What's a band you're rocking out right hard to right now?
That I don't work with, there's an artist named Gregory Alan Isakov that's next level. He's fucking amazing. He just made one of the best albums of the year called Appaloosa Bones. If you don't know it, you should listen to it. All the stuff that Jack works on is great. All the clients that I work with, I love. Yeah, there's some great music out there right now.
All right, man. Last question. What scene ethics do you hold on to this day?
That's the best question of the day. Honestly, because there's so many. I think at the end of the day, community is what it's all about. And that is the most important thing for artists right now. It's like building a community, and it's all about who you are. That's my dog in the background, by the way, Henry. Very special dog. Actually, Henry should get the shout out. He deserves it all. He is everything to me. But I think a lot of the stuff that I take from scene ethics, do it yourself. No one's going to do it for you. You know, if you want something, go get it. Relying on the people around you to help you get there, finding the people that are going to be your brothers in arms. You know, when I look back, like the things that I really miss are being on a journey with my best friends. It's not like the things we accomplished. And I talk about this a lot to the artists that we work with. It's like, you're not going to remember the number one song or the number one album you have or that big tour. You're going to remember the in between stuff. That's what life is, right? And you know, I think that's what I remember. I remember all the laughs that we had in diners. I remember, you know, the moments after shows, getting off stage and hugging your bandmates. You know, those are the beautiful things that I take away from that time period.